So now it works. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have to start. I apologize for a minor delay, but still one of our speakers for today, as well as our expert, are still on the way. My name is Maxim Kiselev. I'm happy to greet you here for our section. You see the name of the section, How Good Leaders Foster Healthy Disruption. As you see, this is all under the framework title of the whole forum this year, about creative disruption. Now I have this privilege to be a moderator, and let me just tell you a few words about myself. I work for Skoltech, the Skoltech Institute of Science and Technology. And for more than 3 years now, I'm working for Skoltech Innovation Center. And my area of research, as well as my area of expertise, is leadership. I'm a psychologist, doctor and professor of psychology, and whatever in Skoltech is not about technologies per se, but is about, like human competences. And as we all understand, leadership is not just the technological knowledge. That will be in my charge. What we're going to speak about today, and just in a minute I introduce our remarkable speakers for today. So, we all, under the forum, this is the third year when we speak about all aspects, all sides of innovations. And innovations in the corporations is incredibly important part of this story, because we all are quite aware of the rapidly growing competitiveness and competitive environment. And in other words, what can provide for the company to stay or to live, and maybe to live forever, right? And under the modern competition, well, I don't want to apply a lot of studies or figures that I certainly have in my mind, but we don't have much time for that. But I think that you will all agree that if we don't move forward, we move back. And what can actually allow any company, no matter what the company is doing, to move forward is to introduce innovations and to be innovative in every aspect of work. Now, I don't even want to relate to the definition of innovation, otherwise it would take all of our time, all the time that we have. But just one simple thing. Well, for me, the very working understanding of innovation would be something new that brings about an added value. This is the value, either the value for the customers, and first of all for the customers. The new product that might actually make someone's life better, right? Otherwise, what are we all working for, if not to make someone's life better? Or, maybe innovative business model. Is that an innovation? Of course. The business model might also be innovative, that will bring a huge competitive advantage to the company that came up with this business model first. But, and I'm sure our remarkable speakers will touch upon that, it's extremely important that any innovation of any sort becomes a part of the daily life for the company. It becomes an embedded component of the company's culture. Well, here in Russia, I'm working in Russia for more than 15 years now, ever since came back from the United States. And it so happened that I ran in this country more than 40 studies of corporate culture of various multinationals. Oh, hello. Multinationals as well as Russian companies. And let me tell you, people, they don't like innovations. Why? Because of uncertainty. Because you don't know how this new thing will work. Innovations have not yet become a very natural part of every Russian company. But one of the points is that still we want innovations to become the necessary and undetachable part of our lives here. Otherwise, it wouldn't make much of sense to collect such huge forums as our forum today. Now, let me introduce you our speakers. Well, Mr. Joe Liu from the Triple M. And I don't think that Triple M and 3M needs any introduction. Well, everyone knows this global company. And it so happened that I've known the company a little bit from the inside for a very long time, because some of my students in Kingston University MBA program, they used to work for your company. Now, we have Ingrid Vanderbilt, who just joined. We were waiting for you. And I'm sure that each of the speakers will add a few words about yourselves. At least I would ask you about that. But Ingrid is actually the leader and the chairperson of the movement which is called Empowering a Billion Women. So we may say that that will be somehow this women look or woman look at the story of innovations. And I'm actually dying to listen to that. And we have Gary Whitehill, who is the editor-in-chief and the founder of Entrepreneur Week. And Gary will, I'm sure, tell about his remarkable insights into the area of innovations that Entrepreneurs Week is massively publishing about. Okay, so it's enough for the introduction. What I would love to ask you to do, then let's confine probably your presentation to some 20 minutes. And then 5 minutes Q&As right after the presentation, because I would love to leave at least 10, 15 minutes for the discussion in the end of our session. Thank you. Okay. So I think that Joe comes the first.
All right.
Please,
okay.
The stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Maxim, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a session is how good leaders foster disruptive innovation, I guess. And then we're in the open innovation forum. I think one thing is not spelled out, but is very critical, is the culture of innovation. So you can almost turn the session into how good leaders foster a open innovation culture. So when I talk about, I'm going to use 3M as a case study to show how important open innovation is for the success of 3M in the last 112 years. But also talk about how we establish a culture of innovation that allow us to sustain 112 years of success. So I suppose most of you know about 3M. Just briefly, so we are very much a diversified technology company. So we have business in 5 different sectors: industrial, safety graphics, electronics, energy, healthcare, and consumer. But what you can tell from this list is the common things behind it, which is the technology base, but also the culture of innovation, which I'll talk about. Majority of my talk is really focused on innovation culture.
Yeah, Maxim.
It's not working. Okay, so 3M has been recognized broadly as one of the most innovative companies. We rank number 5, but the first 4 are all IT companies. So I think in the general industry company, we're really leading in terms of innovation. So now we have even exciting new vision going forward, which is really 3M technology advancing every company, and 3M products enhancing every home, and 3M innovation improving every life. So this is a very compelling, inspiring vision for the company going forward for the next 100 years. You might ask, so why do we all talk about innovation? what is so important about innovation? If I quote Mr. Darwin, he says, it is not the strongest of species that survive, nor the strongest, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So now innovation is really about change. Innovation is really about surviving and growth. Perhaps it's important to see the difference between research and innovation. So research, put in a simple term, is transformation of money into knowledge. So you have to spend money to get some knowledge. But innovation is almost the opposite. Innovation is about transformation of knowledge into money. That's what we're talking about. Innovation really emphasizes the practical value. I think, Maxim, you talk about the value creation. That's really innovation. But perhaps add on is innovation is also about improving people's life in general terms. So with that in mind, let's look at the 3M. So 3M has existed and has been successful for 112 years. The reason we've been able to grow in the 112 years is we've been constantly changing ourselves. That's adapt to the change. When the market changes, we change. When the technology changes, we change. In fact, in many cases, we led the industry. We led the market. Just name a few. So in the 1930s, 3M first invented the retroreflective highway signs that you can see around the world on the highways. That was a new category, right? Provide traffic safety. If we get to the 40s, 3M actually invented the magnetic tapes. This will be before the optical recording DVDs replaced the magnetic tapes. In the 60s, we invented the disposable respirators. In the 80s, we invented post notes. I suppose you all use post notes and you love it, right? So that wasn't the market back those days, but 3M really created a new space and new market. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, we created optical film platform that really enabled liquid crystal display industry to grow. You probably didn't know about that. But I don't have to ask you, you are all 3M customers. Even you don't use post notes. Your smartphones, your laptop computers, and your LCD TVs at home, they all use anywhere from 10 to 30 3M products, which including a very critical component that's enhanced the brightness of the LCD displays. So you can see that along the way, we've been changing ourselves and creating new space for growth. The innovation culture in 3M started by a very visionary leader in 3M. So we're very fortunate to have a leader, William McKnight. So I have a few quotes here. I'm not going to read it. You can read it yourself. But basically, his philosophy was to encourage people to take risk, allow people to make mistakes. So as long as you don't make same mistake repeatedly, right? Then it gave people freedom. That freedom will lead to innovation. Allow people to make mistakes. They'll have the courage to try new things. So this became really our human resource principle and also the foundation of 3M's culture of innovation. Along those philosophy or disciplines that Mr. William McKnight established, there is a very famous part of the culture in 3M that's called 15% culture. Basically, it gives people 15% freedom. You have 15% time, or you have that right to try new things. So what do you do in that 50% culture? You do not need to get your management approval. It's completely to your own decision what you want to try. Turned out that many of 3M's successful products actually started with a 15% effort. I mentioned about the post nodes. That's one of those. So the post node, actually, you probably heard about the story. It started with a research failure. So a chemist by the name of Spence Silver was supposed to create the world's strongest adhesives. But as a result, he got adhesives that's not tacky, not strong enough. So in terms of his original objective of the research, that was a failure. But another engineer, Art Fry, he came up with the idea of using that kind of adhesive to turn into a sticky node that can be reused, will not damage any substrate that's applied to. So this is a good story because really turned into a research failure into a commercialization success, creating entire new category of products that we all love today. So I was talking about the importance of the culture, but you have to remember the culture allows things to happen. That's very important. Because when a culture allows things to happen, give the people freedom, that's in the grassroots level. A lot of things will bubble up. Eventually, some of those become successful. But that's not the only thing. Just having the culture is not enough. You have to have an innovation system that make things happen. So this side, the culture let things happen. This side, the system make things happen. So how we make things happen? That's the 3M open innovation model. So in this case, we're talking about within 3M. We have very much an open innovation culture. That has 3 dimensions. We have 46 technology platforms that are shared across our businesses and across the world. Now, our business serves over 40 different markets. And we have now operations in 70 countries. So now, the magic of 3M's innovation, open innovation model is that all this is all connected. Everything is connected, shared, and leveraged within the company. Let me give you a few examples. The 46 technology platforms, this is the foundation of 3M's core strength. But what is unique is that these technology belong to the company, not belong to any single business unit. So they're owned and shared by all the 40-some business units and by all the 70-plus countries we have operation. For example, our 3M Russia team, Sergey's team, would have access to all the technology around the world, access to all the information. That's one form of open innovation, right? So this perhaps tells all the secret. So in 3M, we apply the technology to different markets. That's all the links in the middle. If I'm in the 3M healthcare, then I have access to all the 46 technology in the company. But if I'm an independent healthcare company, I may have few technologies. So that's a difference. So in 3M, everything's shared. That's very unique. Give you one example. If I take one out of the 46 technology platform, you see over time how they spread in the depth and breadth. So in this case, the micro-application technology back in 1964, I was used to make the overhead projectors. By the way, that was also 3M's invention. Now it's replaced by electronic projectors, of course. But you see the one technology for one application, over the course of a century, half century, it is spread to many, many different fields. If I do not tell you, you will never link abrasives to an LCD display. But in 3M, these two products, the bright enhancement film for LCD displays and brand new abrasives, actually came out of the same technology as micro-application technology. Another thing is our connectivity around the world. So we have over 85 R&D laboratories around the world, but they are all connected. So we have over 10,000 researchers around the world. They share the same basic information, and they have access to all the technology and knowledge in the company, so they can apply these technology and product to serve local market needs and local customers. Again, in this case, in our Russia R&D team, they have all this access to technology that they can apply to how the Russia customers, Russian markets need are. So the innovation culture must have many elements. It's not a single thing making the magic. It has many, many elements. In this case, in 3M, innovation is really a planned, purposeful, and it's global. So in this system, it really makes things happen. And the culture behind us allows things to happen. And so this illustrates how different elements weave together, give you the strength of the culture. So again, it's not a single thing, it's many, many elements coming together. So one of the very critical elements in 3M is this tech form. So I mentioned that the culture is a grassroots level that allows things to happen. So the global tech forum is a grassroots level organization that the management will only give them a budget, give them a freedom. The management does not intervene how they operate. So this is a tremendous power because this organization actually lives, advances, and evolves the 3M culture going forward. A very important element for a culture of innovation is you reward people. Because we talk about how important it is give people freedom, allow people to take make mistakes, and take a risk. But once people are successful from their initiatives that lead into innovation, you must reward them. So in 3M, we have many different ways to reward people.
So you had your phone. So.
The Genesis Grant actually is a monetary award for the people who have idea. They need the money to try. So we give people the money so they can explore. Then the Colton Society is a Lifetime Achievement Award. So give the people who made tremendous contribution to the 3M. And the Circle Time of Excellence Innovation is an annual reward for the top performers around the world. 2 years ago, one of our Russian R&D employee actually got the highest level awards from the company. Each year, we only have 20 people get the highest recognition. So this is a very important component of innovation culture. So if I may summarize in my closing, I try to make it short. To sustain the growth, you must sustain innovation. Then to sustain innovation, you must sustain a culture of innovation. Then to sustain that culture of innovation, people are really the key. So you have to start to put the people in the middle. Now your innovation culture and system is really supposed to support and to motivate people's desire to innovate. Once you have this kind of ecosystem established, then that culture will last for a long time. Then the company can be successful for a long time. So with that, I'll close my talk. And any questions? I think we have a couple minutes for questions.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot. That was very insightful and a great presentation. Let me be the first who would ask you the question.
Okay.
And the question I have is, well, that's our actually under the topic that we discussed, the healthy disruption. Why even such successful global companies like 3M has to be innovative? Why do you have to apply this disruption in order to be a leader in your market?
Right. That's an excellent question, Maxim. So as we know, the world is advancing. In fact, in your opening, you said if we don't move forward, we are actually moving backwards. So the world is moving forward. Competition are growing everywhere, right? So our competitors are advancing. So if we don't innovate, we're going to be falling behind. So we have to be able to disrupt ourselves. So keep enhancing our own competitiveness. In fact, I made my presentation short. At this point, I may add one element, how we actually measure return on investment in 3M. So we have a term called NPVI. So that's New Product Vitality Index, which measures the revenue from the last 5 years new product as a percent of total revenue. So in 3M, that number now is 33%. So which means 3M as a company, a $30 billion global enterprise, every 5 years, 1/3 of our business is renewed, completely renewed. So 1/3 of our business gets renewed every 5 years. So we are disrupting ourselves to make us stay ahead of competition. Otherwise, we'll be falling behind. So that's the prime reason even the 3M successful innovative company for 112 years, we still have to constantly innovating and disrupt ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Just 1 second before we turn to another question. Well, let me introduce our expert in the session today, Mr. Roman Zarabyants, who is the chairman of the board of directors for Rus Hydro International. If you know, this is the rapidly growing Russian global company. Well, at least you will be global, hopefully, in some time. And I will ask later on Roman to relate to actually the various points made by our speakers. But now, please, your question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a very practical question, if you allow me.
Okay.
My company doesn't have thousands of researchers, but we have hundreds of them working in R&D, and we have a problem. Once we allow them to spend some of their time for new ideas to develop of their own, we either lose them, finally, they go to open their own business or go sell it to another company, or we get the innovation which doesn't allow them to work for their main task. And in the second case, it's okay while it stays inside the company, but otherwise we cannot keep them inside. What is your experience? What is your expertise? How to keep them and to make it work for your company and not for the other company?
Thank you. That's an excellent question.
Excuse me,
So-
just one thing. May I ask you to name yourself?
Okay.
As well as when you are asking the question to our speakers, please name yourselves.
Konstantin Aksionov, GS Group.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for an excellent question. So first of all, let me say that 3M, even today, we are a big company. We have over 10,000 researchers. But when we started 100 years ago, we were a very small company in a very small town, mining minerals and making abrasives. So we didn't really start big. And then our very first laboratory actually was turned into from a very small storage into a laboratory. But from where we actually created the very first patented product, turn the company into profitability. So we need to start from small. So I think I'm glad you already have hundreds of researchers. That's very good stage of critical mass for innovation. I think your question is really around if you gave people freedom, 15% or whatever freedom, you worry about losing them. So I think there's two aspects I like to address your questions. Number one is that if you don't give them freedom, you might actually lose them also, right? They're going to go look for places they can actually innovate. So it's essential as enterprise, as leaders, we recognize people's desire to innovate and people's desire to have free thinking. So we incorporate that into our operation. But the second element is how we manage that. That's the key. So in 3M, our practice is that's why we call it 15%. We don't call it 50% or 80%, right? which implies 85% of people's effort and time should align to the company's priority directions, right? That's essential because that's bulk of the resources and time is spent on driving execution priorities, making the company successful. So once they do that, they actually earn the right to spend 15% time for free innovation. So there is a condition. So everyone must do well on the primary job, which align to the company's priorities, to contribute. Then you have the right to practice your own innovation. If you're successful, now you are rewarded by the company. So actually, it's additional contribution, additional reward, benefit to the individuals. So this becomes a more balanced approach. So the key, as I mentioned, one slide before my closing, is reward recognition is very, very important. So if you only encourage people to innovate, whether they are successful from the majority of the effort or they become successful with their little self-initiative, you must reward them handsomely. Handsomely doesn't mean a lot of money. Sometimes just is unforgettable memory. In our case, when our people get the highest level award, we actually don't give them any money, but we fly them to St. Paul, to Minnesota, regardless of where they are, and bring their spouse or a guest. Now we send them to a resort in the northern Minnesota, have 3 to 5 days of free time. You can hunt, you can fish, you can just have a great time, and you are fed very nicely with a crew that just serves you. So you feel like treated like a king or a queen for a few days of unforgettable memory. So that's one form of reward recognition, and encourage people to continue to innovate. Inevitably, there are some people who leave, which is natural. But I think our experience is that once you have a culture of innovation everyone likes, everyone loves, then you actually retain people very nicely. So in 3M, we have very good retention record. Usually is much better than the general industry. If you talk to them why, number one reason is because of the culture innovation people likes. So hope that's helpful. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you. Because the time runs, let me now ask our expert, Raman. That will be my question to you. Like, to what extent do you think this experience and this, so to say, culture of innovations that is so natural for M, the global company, is applicable to the Russian bio-region company like Rushydro? And what are your insights into the story?
Oh, yeah. Hello. Yeah.
You can come up here if you wish.
Okay.
Yeah,
and okay, and may I speak in Russian? Yeah? Is it okay?
Yes.
For you?
Yeah,
Okay, для разнообразия я просто по-русски, если вы позволите, поговорю.
For a change, I'll speak Russian. In fact, I represent a company, Roshydro International. This is a group of companies that implements international projects, Roshydro. You probably know that Roshydro is one of the innovative companies. In Russia, we have innovations director here who could tell us in detail how it's organized. Of course, it's very interesting how it's organized in the best companies and the most innovative companies. I have no doubt that future movement of Roshydro group is the same and will do similar things. However, I'm interested in something else, in another approach to this problem. The projects in my company are connected with the implementation of new technologies, new practices, innovative technologies in those federation facilities that are under our management. One of our projects is a hydro station in Nigeria, which is managed by our company. The key issues that are arising and which we are solving is the implementation of absolutely new technologies of maintenance, rehabilitation, operation, and general management. In fact, the potential of this implementation is very high. I'm speaking of this particular hydro station. And the key issue is how to organize the implementation. It is the most important issue because innovation is something that entails high costs and has been implemented. My colleagues said that people are the key element of this implementation, and the way such project is managed, how to build environment and motivation for people working at the station, and how to avoid the conflict between innovations, maintenance, and current work is something that we face every day. Some people think that engineers always have a conflict between what they are doing and the innovations that are offered. How to avoid this conflict? I think it's artificial. It doesn't exist in reality. And this is the biggest task I'm interested in and which I'm prepared to discuss. Thank you, Roman.
To this most important thing, well, as I said before, people normally don't like innovations because innovations or anything new by definition brings about uncertainty. And nobody likes uncertainty. This is our basic instinct. As a psychologist, I can tell you that a lot of things are really dependent on our basic instinct, like self-protection and self-safety. But now we had the position and the wonderful example of innovative culture of one of the hugest and world-known global companies. Ingrid, I think, will bring about the view of the public organization, despite tremendous experience with the global corporations, but now you are leading the public organization, which is somehow to the same end and looking at the innovations. So please. And then Gary later on will bring a point of the media, which is making it known to everyone. Please, Ingrid, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. You all enjoying yourself?
Добрый день всем присутствующим.
Time? Well, it's good to be here. I just flew in late last night, and we had a few wires crossed on timing today, so thank you for working it out so that I could be with you. I was excited to talk about this topic with you. And what I thought I would do is actually take you through my own case study. Is this okay?
Yeah.
They're trying to fix the... Okay. Are we good? All right. If it bothers you, just give me a note. Yeah, you're okay? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, to give you a little bit of background on myself and where this whole concept of how can we sort of, what can we take away from this particular session? When you leave here today, how can you think about sort of in your own world, in your own businesses, great leadership fostering innovation? And so I thought I would tell you, again, take it from a case study of my own experience, give you a little bit of my background, and talk to you about how we do it in my own companies. So as background, as mentioned, I am the chairperson of an organization called EBW 2020. EBW 2020 stands for Empowering 1 Billion Women by 2020 by providing them the tools, technology, and resources that women need to see themselves as leaders, but also as successful entrepreneurs. And the way that we achieve this goal is through business, policy, and media. And in its simplest form, we believe that the way that women will emerge as leaders and as successful entrepreneurs is getting a smartphone into the hand of every woman out there and providing them financial literacy and entrepreneurship learnings and mentorship. When I first set down the path of EBW 2020, I knew the only way that we were going to achieve this goal is if I teamed up with a global corporation. And so Michael Dell and I, does everyone know Michael Dell, I guess, in the room from Dell Computers? Michael Dell and I teamed up to achieve this goal together. So my background is as a lifelong entrepreneur. I've built and sold a number of different companies in a number of different industries. They've all been technology-related companies. So I've built data mining, data analytics, social media, green energy, and I'm also a former business television host in the United States with CNBC. I'm a member of the United Nations Foundation Global Entrepreneurship Council. So there are 10 of the world's top entrepreneurs on that council, and I was asked to be one of them. And about 3 years ago, with this vision of, can I have a handheld? Okay, let me switch there. Thank you. Oh, that's much better. Is that good for you? It's much better for me, too. Thank you. So as we looked at how now at this point in this stage of my life, after having sold the last 2 companies that I was involved in, how would one person lead a vision of empowering 1 billion women by 2020? How do you actually do this? How do you foster innovation? How do you reach 1/7 of the world's population? How do we do this? And I knew that the only way that I was going to be able to reach my dream was to team up with a global corporation who shared those same values, who also wanted to do the same thing. Fortunately for me, Michael Dell with Dell Computers, now about 3.5 years ago, we sat down and had a conversation. He and I have known each other for some time. When I was building my first company, he and I shared the same mentor and also the same first investors. So Michael and I sat down and I shared with him the vision of EBW 2020. And I said, the only way that we're going to reach all of these women worldwide is by getting a mobile device, like I said, a smartphone. At the time, Dell was involved in the smartphone marketplace, getting a smartphone into the hands of women around the world. And imagine if those devices were Dell devices. Well, thankfully for me back then, he bought into the potential of that vision and bought into the idea that even if I was a little bit right, even if we didn't reach this 1 billion women goal, but only reached a percentage of it, and those women around the world were running on Dell devices, that would be really, really great business for Dell, right? So he bought into that, and we teamed up, and I signed on to work with him to be the entrepreneur in residence for Dell. The idea at the time, when I became the EIR for Dell, was specifically brought in to lead innovation, disruptive thinking inside an established organization like Dell, so that together we could work towards this goal of EBW 2020. What happened when I got inside of Dell was I began to do my research on how do we make this happen? How does somebody from the outside come in and work with an established organization and established leadership to foster innovation? And what I realized very early on was that while my vision of EBW 2020 doesn't change, the only way that we're really going to reach that goal is in very strong collaboration with all of the guys out there, with all the men. So what we did early on was we looked at, well, what are the bigger opportunities for Dell? What are the bigger opportunities at that stage of the company's life cycle? And how could we take advantage of some of these market opportunities and get Dell into a leadership position? So this is what we did. We went off and studied the market, and at the time that I teamed up with Dell Dell's bread and butter, as we like to say in the United States. So the core of Dell's business was built on large enterprise. So Dell was selling to lots of large companies, really wasn't selling to women, wasn't selling to entrepreneurs, the small to medium business place. They had a business unit focused on that, but that was not the primary business of what we were doing. So as I researched what that opportunity would be for the company, we uncovered that around the world, $559 billion is spent annually by small to medium business owners in IT. And there was no large technology company that was a leader in that market space. And so what Michael and I sat down to do was we said, well, what would it look like if Dell could be the leader in this market space, having the relationships with entrepreneurs and small business owners? What would that look like? Dell's business is about $55 billion a year annually, so it's a pretty good run rate. But even if we captured 3% of this $559 billion marketplace, it's huge business to the company, right? And from my perspective, we said if we could reach part of that marketplace, if we could connect with the entrepreneurs and small business owners, well, we know statistically that about half of those are women. So for me personally, it was also moving my interest forward to empower 1 billion women by 2020. So that was a big shift for Dell to even start thinking, how would we take a company whose focus has been enterprise and make it relevant in an entirely new marketplace? So the way that we did that, and to just kind of walk you through this case study and give you some things to think about, was I knew how important it was going to be that I had buy-in across all of the Dell leadership. I was an outsider coming in, being welcomed into Dell, and for me to be able to build something that would be sustainable, I had to have the buy-in of not just Michael Dell, but all of the leadership. So I set off to develop a business plan, and that business plan basically said, okay, well, what if we even accomplished a little bit of that marketplace, that $559 billion marketplace? What if we captured even 8% or less than 1%? And I developed a plan that said, you know, the critical need that entrepreneurs and small business owners have outside of sort of mentoring, you know, help, access to technology, is actually access to money. And Dell had a lot of money at the time. And I said, why don't we make some of that money available to entrepreneurs to make it easier to buy your products? And so the business plan that I built was, I said, what if we developed a $100 million credit fund? This is not an equity fund. This is not me writing you a check and taking ownership in your business. It's me providing you credit so that you have money as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, to buy Dell products. And if I had $100 million, what do I think I could do with that? Well, we ran the numbers on that, and I figured that within 3 years, we'd be able to generate $1 billion in net new revenue. So over 36 months, we would take $100 million and we would turn that into $1 billion. Now, the vision of that was really exciting. We all thought this was a neat idea, but I knew also that there was no way I was going to get Michael Dell to write me a $100 million check. I was brand new from the outside, coming in, leading innovation, trying to get buy-in. I'm working with executives who have built their careers inside of Dell, who everybody has to struggle to get budget, even if it's a $50,000 budget or a $100,000 budget. And there was no way coming in from the outside I'd get a $100 million check out of the gate, even though we had a great business plan. So what I did, and this is critical, as you're thinking about how do you foster innovation, whether it's inside your own organization or if you're going inside an organization, how do you do this? And the simplest concept of this is taking baby steps. And what I mean by this is I presented the full plan to Michael and the other executives for the $100 million to turn it into $1 billion. And I said, but for us to start, all I need was, we actually started with less than a $75,000 budget. So it was very, very small in light of the big picture. And I said, give me the $75,000 budget, and within 90 days, I'll turn that into over $500,000. I'll show you that we can create that, that ROI for you. Well, that mitigated the risk for them, and they agreed to do that. They said, let's move forward, and that would allow us on sort of a big scale to go out into the marketplace and say, we're prepared to fund up to $100 million, but internally we knew that we were mitigating and managing that risk. So they gave the $75,000 check, and within 90 days we turned that into $1.5 million. So it actually went way, we generated way more than what we thought we would do. And my agreement with Michael up front was, if I hit that goal, which was $500,000, if I hit that goal, I'm going to come back and I'm going to need a bigger check, and then a bigger check, and then a bigger check. But everything was based on milestones. And lo and behold, the first year of operating this fund, like I said, our goal was to generate $1 billion of net new revenue within 36 months. The growth pattern for that was, we'll generate $50 million in sales the first year, $250 million in sales the second year, and $1 billion in the third year. And it'll take us $100 million to do this growth curve. After the first year, we had put about $5 million to work. And we came out of the first year and we hit $250 million in sales. We had a huge return. So you can imagine how much easier that made it for me to go back the next time around and say, okay, I need a bigger check to get to that end goal. And sure enough, they've done that. The credit fund that I set up, starting out at $100 million, is now a $250 million. We have Dell right in line with that $1 billion goal that we set. And in terms of the market impact that this has had, I think maybe many of you know last year the company did end up going private. This was a very big deal for us. This is a company that many years ago went public, and we decided to take the company private again to bring it back to its entrepreneurial roots. And Dell established itself in a leadership position. And last year alone, you know, when I kind of take a step back from all of that and say, okay, as a person who came in with a big vision and then teamed up with a global corporation and a global leader in Michael Dell, and really figured out how can we create a win-win scenario here so that we both win, and if I help him achieve success, it helps me achieve success towards empowering 1 billion women by 2020. I look at last year alone, and the media impact that we had was, we reached 600 million people around the world. And what's exciting about that, on a number of levels, but it really speaks to the power and potential, how a person, when you work together, again, with a strong leader, and you paint a big vision of what's possible, but understand that we have to create a win-win scenario and mitigate the risk for the established leader, it's incredible what you can do together. So I have a few key takeaways just to leave you with in terms of what you can be thinking about, again, whether it's inside your own company as you're fostering innovation, or whether you're going inside a company and bringing innovation. What are some of the strategies to keep in mind? I've mentioned a few of them. You mentioned some just now in terms that I just was so resonating with when you said, at 3M, we understand that mistakes are going to happen. In a place where we're fostering innovation, we're not always going to get it right. And I think that's so important, not only as the leader that's adopting the innovation, but as the disruptor, if you will, that's coming in, to be very, very transparent about where you are in the development of whatever that innovation is. You have your plan, you're working your plan, mistakes are going to happen, but the moment that leadership doesn't believe that this is transparent, that you're being upfront with them, that mistakes are happening, that's when the trust is broken. And it's not as easy to forge a relationship that's going to allow you both to win. So being transparent in that process is critical. Knowing that mistakes are going to happen is critical. Another idea to think about is the idea of, and again, Joe, you mentioned this too, the idea of almost incubation of ideas inside your organization. Another thing that we did both at Dell, and I do it inside of EBW 2020, is we set aside budget. At Dell, we set aside a little incubation that was a $3 million budget, separate from the work that I was doing, but it was specifically to encourage intrapreneurs inside the organization to bring new ideas that could help Dell move forward, and we had a $3 million annual budget to put towards that. I do the same thing at EBW. My budget is not $3 million, but we do set aside budget to encourage people to bring those ideas and move them forward. And then the final thing that I'll mention as leaders is that it's really, if you really want to foster innovation inside your organization, people want to work with you. They want to innovate with you. They want to be part of forward-thinking organizations that give them the chance to stretch their thinking. I think you asked the question a little bit earlier about how do you do it in a way so that as people bring really great ideas, they don't then leave the company. Well, I think a wonderful way to do this, and my final suggestion, is that really encourage your leaders to prioritize innovation, but do it in a way so that people understand what is that path to participate in that innovation. What is that? You know, I mentioned that we set aside budget at EBW, we set aside budget at Dell, but what is that path so that people very clearly know this is the way to innovate. They're not scared to bring those ideas to you because they know that you know mistakes will happen. And when you bring an idea to the table and you've presented it in a way that mitigates risk for the leaders, I've never met a leader, myself, Michael Dell, and the rest of the executive leadership, as far as all of them are concerned, that wouldn't take a small risk to see if what your innovative idea is, see if it'll even work. So as you're thinking about those ideas, think about how do you mitigate risk for those leaders so that, again, together you can try something new, you can move towards this bigger vision, but you've mitigate risk for everybody and stay transparent in that process. And that really has been sort of the secret sauce recipe of how we make things done, both at Dell and then at EBW 2020. So thank you very much. It's so nice to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid, for the great talk. Well, let me ask you the first question, and the question that I'm often asked by my students then. As a woman leader, what are the major differences that you see between leadership of a woman as opposed to the leadership of a man?
Well, I'm biased on that one, but what I will share with you about that is I think that, and the question comes up often, one of the things that I get from working with all the men leaders, which is usually what it is, and I enjoy it very much, is that it's sort of this logical thinking forward, whereas women are thinking logically, I'd like to say all the time, but we really look at the whole picture. We're taking everything into consideration, and so we're really looking at how do we build community around ideas. And so I think that there's a really nice balance when men and women work together. One thing I will mention, though, is I will say that the thing that was the game changer for me personally, when I was building my first companies and my first tech companies, and I was going out to raise money from investors, and my companies almost went out of business. One of them actually did because I couldn't raise the money. And one of my advisors said, Ingrid, I think this is happening because you don't look like, act like, sound like, or talk like any of the CEOs that the investors are used to funding, and I don't think you're going to get it done. As a young entrepreneur, it was very difficult for me to hear. But when I finally had the click go off in my head that it's not about how you look, act, or sound, but that great leaders want to work with great leaders, and that if I bring a really good idea to the table and I stay very focused on the business, win-win for both sides, that equalizes the conversation all of the time. So I think that's something that as women, as we continue to emerge as leaders, almost putting aside the conversation of, you know, there are complementary differences, but to own the opportunity of stay focused on what is the business value of working together, and that's where you create the win-win.
Thank you. Now we have time for a couple questions, and then we turn to Gary. Please. Yes, Roman. Yes.
Yeah. My questions, I think for everybody here. You said about global cooperation. And what do you feel about competition? Do you feel some conflict area between global cooperation and global competitions?
So just so I understand the question, what is the, I'm not sure on what it is. So between a global corporation and global competition,
yeah.
What's the question?
This is the contradiction. This is
Yes.
the obvious contradiction. And what do you think about, you know, balancing these two things? If I understood Roman's question correctly, this is obviously a contradiction between, on the one hand, the trend to global corporation, on the other hand, global competition. So how to balance these two things?
Well, I think, and hopefully this is answering the question, but as a capitalist and as an entrepreneur, I personally believe that the way that we're going to solve whatever our global challenges are, I mean, and you can take them, but it's through entrepreneurs being successful, and it's through corporations being successful. And I think global competition is very healthy to keep companies like 3M, to keep companies like Dell, to certainly keep us on our toes, because with that competition, the ones that are going to win that game are the ones that are ultimately listening to what the customer is asking them to do. So in the case of Dell, when we really turned the company around and got it into a leadership position with the entrepreneurial and small business marketplace, it was frankly because we listened to what the market needed and saw that there was nobody owning that space, and so we went after it. And now there are lots of other corporations doing the exact same thing. So I think it's very, very healthy for business.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Ingrid, thank you so much for such an insightful look at the things and a very great case study that you presented on your own, so to say, like life experience. Now we turn to Gary's point, because Gary, I think, combines many views from various entrepreneurial communities. Please, when you have 5 minutes left, I'll show you this side.
All right, that sounds good. Just going to get a couple house cleaning things out of the way. How's everybody doing this afternoon? Good? All right, wonderful. So today we're going to talk about fostering disruption and not about catching the falling knives. And the reason I call it knives is because the challenge when fostering disruption in a company is that a lot of times you try to do too much at once, and you're not very principled about how you do it. So what happens is you end up getting cut. The CEO gets cut publicly, the CMO gets cut because something doesn't work out, and that nice, happy innovation program that you thought you had, unlike Ingrid's program that she built, gets cut just like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the trends and some of these other things that you should keep in mind as we move forward in society today. Because where we are today is not where we're going to be tomorrow. So a lot of times this is how we think about analyzing a company, right? You have your resources, you have your hopes and dreams, but we never actually make it tangible. There's very few people in the world like Ingrid Vandervelt and also the Dell Center for Entrepreneurs, which I'm fortunate to sit on the global board of, that actually have tangibly made a meaningful difference in innovation, because innovation is not at the core of the company, unlike Joe's company as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that actually means. So I like this slide. Ernest Hemingway, I think, had it right. And particularly when it comes to innovation, this is true. And the reason why it's true is because at the end of the day, you spend a lot of money, like Joe said once again, and you don't always have a future reality of how you make money back. And we're going to discuss tangible ways in the next couple years of the trends that you need to be keeping in mind as you decide to invest in innovation. What happens in companies, the bigger they get, the more they get into the weeds. So the problem when you get into the weeds is actually pretty simple. Bill Gates had it right. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. What happens in big companies is they get lots of process. When they get lots of process, it stifles innovation. One of the great things that we did at Dell was we had a beeline to a guy named Michael Dell. We had a beeline to a guy named Steve Felice. Last time I checked, that's the CEO and the president of a multi-billion-dollar company that scales all over the world. And we had that, and we were successful because we didn't subscribe to this. Most people think they're smart because they scaled a billion-dollar company, and they rest on their loins. What was beautiful about Joe's presentation is that 3M forces themselves to disrupt themselves. Let me say that again. They force themselves to disrupt themselves every 5 years. I don't know more than 10 companies in the world that do that as a core operating principle. And that's the difference. Companies today do not have people at the center. When the first question was asked by the gentleman in the white a while back, how you keep your employees, right away I went back to Joe's presentation and where he had people in the center. And I can tell you the exact same thing is true about what Ingrid did. Ingrid didn't succeed just because she's brilliant, just because she had a great plan. She surrounded herself with the right people and empowered them to do the right things at the right time. She was smart, but she didn't want to lose. So when you're in the weeds, remember what power actually is. Because the funny thing about being a CEO of a company is you think power is about control. You think power is about money. But the reality check is power is about effective action. And the bigger your company is, not only the farther you fall, the harder it is to actually innovate. So this is usually what happens. What happens is we rest on our loins. We've been successful for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, some businesses even 20 years, until you don't, until you fall. And that's why innovation is so important in companies. Because a lot of times innovation is not something that happens overnight. It does happen sometimes overnight, and those are statistical anomalies. Just like it's a statistical anomaly that there are serial killers in the world. Same thing. So you can point at innovation in any company and say you're an innovative company, but the fact of the matter is, very few companies have a core operating principle at their center that says we're innovative, we empower our people, and we believe in a vision of a future reality that doesn't always quantify itself on a spreadsheet, folks. So why does this happen? The reason this happens is because of the structure of companies and the systems we have today. Lao Tzu had a very good quote. Because not only does this apply to life, it also applies to your business and how you think about strategy as a CEO of a company. So what we're going to talk about right now is the inherent dynamics that are the dichotomies that you have as a CEO trying to drive innovation in your company, particularly in a public company. Total stability in a system is beyond reach. There's somehow this heuristic we have as humans that we think the world is going to be perfect, that there's not going to be challenges, that we can make things perfect, that we can be happy all the time. That's not how real life works. As everybody who's gone up before me has said, mistakes happen. Mistakes are supposed to happen. We stand on the shoulders of giants as human beings because people made mistakes before us. Second thing. The reason we're standing here talking about innovation is because of two things that happened 50 and 30 years ago. In the 1950s is when the consulting revolution happened. And the consulting revolution, believe it or not, 60 years. It's only been 60 years since we learned how to quantifiably benchmark companies. It's only been 60 years. So somehow in the past 60 years, we've figured out that we know the magic sauce about how to build a public company, how to scale a company, all these things that although we've been around for thousands of years as humans, magically in 60 years we know what we're talking about. Last time I checked, we're pretty prone to mistakes. The second point is in the 1980s, there was a gentleman who I don't agree with at all, named Milton Friedman, who started this thing called the shareholder revolution. The shareholder revolution said that public companies and companies in general are meant to do one thing: return on investment to shareholders. If you operate your company with the central organizing principle being money, it will fail. It's only a matter of time till either you fail or get acquired. Blockbuster, perfect example. Radio Shack, perfect example. Name another global company that has fallen in the past 5 or 10 years. The reason why is because their operating principle was money. Their operating principle was not innovation. Systems are not marathons, but a successive amount of sprints. Innovation, folks, is not keep going forward. This is what you do in a public company. You keep moving forward. You're in a marathon. Except that's not how it works. Innovation works like this. Sometimes you go backwards. Sometimes you go forwards. Sometimes you go sideways. It is not linear. It's dynamic. It's interdisciplinary. And most of the time, you don't know what's going to come out of it. The brilliance at 3M is they give people 15% of their time to do whatever they want. And you know why that matters? Because you don't come up with anything creative by being forced to be creative. You figure it out sitting with trees. You figure it out reading a book. You figure it out doodling on a piece of paper. It never comes from the way in which you think it's going to. That's not how human beings work. Another thing about systems that's completely different in a company versus what you're trying to do and manage innovation. In a company, you're trying to manage profit. You are looking at a spreadsheet. It's called budgeting. You're looking at HR and all these things that have to do with operational capabilities and things like that. Problem is, they're linear extrapolations. And the thing about innovation is it's not linear. It doesn't go do-do-do-do-do-do. Sometimes it goes like that. Sometimes it drops. It goes all over the place. And there's no way, in any way, shape, or form, if you're linear and you look at things in a spreadsheet, like you do in most companies, because money is your operating principle instead of innovation in people, that you don't turn blind. And that's what happens at the CEO level, and the C-suite level in general, in every single company. They don't understand the customers. They don't have empathy with the customers. They don't even understand their own employees. They don't have empathy with their employees. And the reason why is because it's really easy to sit in a fancy office, in a fancy suite, wherever the heck it is. It's hard to get on the ground and have empathy for your customers, your employee, and have the balls to have innovation. The thing about technology is it can be really helpful in innovation. Joe's case, once again, is a perfect example of how you have 80 offices around the world that combine to do really great things. The problem is when, once again, you structure your systems linearly and you don't put people at the middle of the operating principle and you don't put innovation at the middle of your operating principle, is what technology does is it actually magnifies the inefficiencies in your organization. So what you go from being is a well-intentioned innovation organization to a scatterbrained organization trying to fill potholes. And that's what happens in most companies, folks. And that's why this last point is so important, is because when you put technology at the core of any company, which is just about what any company has to do these days, it interlinks things quicker, faster, more dynamically. So it magnifies the inefficiencies. What the rest of this presentation is about is to make sure that you be a little less inefficient and much more strategic. Because economics right now is driven by these fiefdoms of entry. Economics is driven in a way that is different than how innovation actually happens. Right now it's very top down. What we did at Dell, and Ingrid can be a testament to it, is we went horizontally. We made sure that we involved every single part of the company globally, so that they understood what we were doing in the innovation vertical. Well, actually, it's innovation horizontal, and that's the difference. Joe, his company, had innovation horizontally across the company. Most companies put it vertically, and that doesn't work. It doesn't scale, because what happens is, once again, in systems, people have other agendas besides innovation. Just about everybody else in the company is incentivized not to be innovative. So remember, I've said this already 4 or 5 times. Money cannot be the central operating principle, Because the reason why is everybody else who's not in the innovation business, which is what we were at Dell at the Center for Entrepreneurs, they either want to be part of you, or most of the time they're against you in the organization. So you multiply that by 10 employees, or 1,000, or 10,000, or 100,000 employees, real quickly it's very easy to get upended by the rest of the organization. Because their incentives are all around money. Their incentives are all around an agenda that's different than yours. And it's a scary thing for them. So the reason why passion and creation matter is because, once again, that's what drives innovation. And although it sounds foo-fooey and all these things right now, we're going to take a couple minutes and talk a little bit about what passion and creation actually means. To make it tangible from the customer perspective, customers right now want autonomy and choice. That's something your employees want in the innovation vertical. They want the same thing. Going back to how do you keep employees? That's step number one. They want autonomy and choice. Number two, understanding humans, as I said, it's a new phenomenon. This is not something that we know very well. From a psychology perspective, from a business perspective, the way in which the dynamics of the system as a corporation and a system as an innovative company works, we're still just learning about it, folks. It means mistakes are going to happen. Technology is an accelerant. We already talked a little bit about that. Confusion. We actually don't know how to use technology. We're human beings that are hardwired from 100,000 years ago. The last time we got an update was our neocortex. That's the gray matter in your forehead. That came 5,000 years ago. So in the past 5,000 years, we don't have any new updates as human beings, yet technology is forcing us to figure out what to do. So remember, technology can be powerful, and technology will be at the core of your innovation business. The problem is we don't exactly know how to use it yet. So this is why you shouldn't be part of running after the crowd. And we're running short on time, so I'm going to skip through a couple slides very quickly. But Michelangelo said something really good here. This is what happens in most of the organization, besides those who are trying to drive innovation in the company. They don't want change real quick. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to just put all the bullet points up there at once. Well, they got passed by. There we go. All of your competitors, this is what they're going to do. Because all of your competitors think about what worked in the past. What we did at Dell and what I'm thankful to help Ingrid have done with Michael Dell is to not do any of these things. Most CEOs look in the past. They daydream about a future that's based in the past. Last time I checked how you build a future that's new, you don't think about the past. Because as Henry Ford said, if I was going to build something, human beings would have just asked for a faster horse, not a car. Number two, don't be reactive. Everything that happens in your organization is almost a direct byproduct of a reaction to something else. Innovation is not a reactionary force. Innovation is a proactive, intentional, principled, power-driven force that has intentional action. What we did at Dell was intentional in every step of the way. When Ingrid said in the first 90 days, I'm going to return the money to you and this much more, that was intentional. That became her lens. The rest of your organization doesn't work that way. It's not structured that way. You have to be a turtle. Ingrid can tell you this too. As fast as we moved is as slow as we moved in the strategic process. The reason why is because you have a rush. And this rush is called investors. And they constantly berate you to change, to do things for money. Do things for money. So guess what? This tick, 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 this means failure. The more you feel that you have to move quick, the quicker you're going to fail. Because when it comes to strategy and when it comes to innovation, the slower you go at first, the faster you move a year, 2 years, and 5 years down the road. You don't build a pyramid on top of quicksand. You build a pyramid on top of solid stone. Solid stone is built, once again, by going slow, thinking strategically. Last but not least, because we're running out of time, right?
Yeah. Okay. 1 minute.
There's a very big difference between intent and a checklist. In every organization that I've ever gone and helped to do corporate innovation in, besides Dell, they've decided that innovation is a checklist. We're going to hire this employee, and we're going to pay them this, and they're going to do this all the time, and this is going to be the byproduct. There literally is no opportunity to think for yourself. It's just force-fed to you. And the problem is, if you apply this to strategy in the Army, for instance, last time I checked, there's no army in the world that's successful by thinking linearly. Because if it was easy to be linear, we would just walk up to each other and do this. If you think about how wars are fought, they're interdynamic, they're strategic, they have intent behind them. They think from a multidisciplinary way in multiple phases. Every corporate organization that I've ever helped, and I've helped organizations in the airline industry, in the technology industry, in the software industry, they all continue to think linear, besides basically the two folks that are sitting here. So I know we're running out of time. I had a lot more to cover, but thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Gary. That was like impressive and emotional. And the only thing that I regret about that we always have too little time for these interesting talks. But still, my question to you.
Sure.
Just in one word, or maybe in couple words, but very brief, what is the major challenge for the modern corporations to really have the innovation culture and to have innovation as the part of their daily activity?
I'm having them put the slides back up because it's not one word. And I want to show you something
But it's
really
1
quick.
minute.
That's
we
fine.
don't have more.
I got to explain it real quick.
Okay.
Because this is the key slide. This is why we were successful at Dell, and you can actually map it to what Joe does, if they can do it quickly. All right. Well, I don't know where it is. All right.
Okay.
It's not an easy answer. It's not a one-word answer. It's an interdynamic answer. And there's no way I can answer that in less than a minute. It's impossible.
Well, maybe that was a provocative question then, but you know, we speak a lot about innovation, sometimes having or inputting different meanings into the word, sometimes differently understanding, right, what it is all about. But the major thing is this very disruption that we try to discuss through our session, right? Just don't, and I think that was one of your points, do not stop, do not be reactive. These are the two things, right? Do not react to the circumstances that are pushing you in the back, but make the first step and be forward. Be a step ahead of any circumstances. Now, we have time for a couple questions, then we'll have to conclude. Yes, please. Would you mind to name yourself also?
Sure.
Thank you.
Theo Forbath, Global Vice President of Digital Transformation at Cognizant, formerly Vice President of Innovation Strategy at Frog Design. Want to know how you manage to balance in large corporations what I call the litmus test for innovation, which is if you don't feel like you're in an elevator in free fall, then you're not innovating.
That's correct.
So if you're feeling comfortable and you're telling me you're innovating, I don't believe it. And one of the biggest challenges I run into in my work, and I've been doing this work for a long time as well, is how do you balance that type of challenge that has to happen every day in a culture against these large corporations that really today operate on risk aversion, on process discipline. And so those are very contradictory, not even to get into the areas of creativity and empathy and breaking silos. But let's just take that one aspect of it, that you're trying to create a culture that allows people to fail, that allows people to be uncomfortable within large organizations that focus on very different set of metrics.
It's a phenomenal question. The breadth and depth of the question that you just asked shows the fact that you've been doing this for many years, sir. And fortunately, I was able to find the slide. Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to go back to senior management with a very principled way that you explain why that edge of chaos, what that looks like, why it's important, and why you can be intentional. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. Here's how we think through systems in corporations. Most corporations don't care because the pay packages of the CEO at the top, they could care less. The thing that happens in low-level organizations where money is their operating principle is most of the times they don't know. The reason they don't know is it's easier for them to play the smoke and mirrors game and keep pumping the stock price than actually do anything meaningful. What also happens is there's people that know, but they get pushed out of the bell curve. And the reason they do is because those folks are trying to change the boat. What you have is this is government in most particular circumstances. You have a lot of good people who get pushed out of organizations because those organizations are stuck in the teach and stuck in the money verticals. What happens is, in most cases, you either want to be taught or you want to be healed. In big companies, everybody wants to be taught. They want to know the newest thing. They want to get to a better stock price. They want this, they want that. Boom, 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 boom. That's an addiction. Money's an addiction, and so is being addicted to learning. When you get to the higher level, that's why in this graph there's a line. You either want to be healed and you want to accept what's actually going on. So what happens is, sir, when you're in the innovation vertical, you flip the bell curve upside down. Because when you want to be healed, there's a lot of people who don't care, which is probably the CEO of your company. But successful organizations like Dell, we know and we accept that we don't know everything. And on the fringe in that upper right bracket, that's exactly where you hand to the CEO of your company and you highlight it in green. And you say, this is what I know how to do. You don't know how to do this. Your incentives aren't aligned like this. Everybody else in the company isn't aligned like this. But I know how to do it. It's a much longer answer of how exactly you'd explain that strategically. I'm happy to do it with you after. But that's the graph that you should show because it's the most fundamental, simplest way from an organizing principle way to show that your senior management doesn't know what they're doing. The rest of the organization has no respect for you, and it's not their job to understand what you do, and they have no empathy for you. But it's a very sincere way to pull budget down strategically as long as you're principled around that graph.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very sorry. We just don't have maybe enough time for the real discussion here. But let me thank all of our speakers. I think it was just quite incredible. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Ingrid. And I think if I was asked this question about innovation and innovation as a disruption, maybe I would try to give just one word. And this word would be, do not fear. Just don't fear to introduce this disruption. Don't fear to introduce this innovation. Would you agree? And don't fear to make a mistake. For those who don't make mistakes, they don't move anywhere. And the quietest place in the world is in the cemetery, right? The most organized. Now, let me thank you all. And I hope that we'll have a chance. Well, first of all, you will have a chance to speak with our speakers during the breaks. Second, well, let me also thank our expert, Roman, well, with the insightful view on the Russian, so to say, Russian global perspective of the things, because I can believe that you encounter a lot of challenges right now. But I wish you all possible luck. And thank you all, and we'll just continue with the forum. Thanks.